Good morning. Welcome to morning meditation. It is great to be with you. We missed Star Wars days yesterday. May the 4th be with you. But today, Cinco de Mayo, which in Spanish means the 5th of May. So we can do that. The date is observed to commemorate the Mexican Army's victory over the French Empire. This is the French in the Battle of Puebla, May 5th, 1862. The victory of the smaller Mexican force against a larger French force was a moral boost for the Mexicans. A year later, the French defeated the Mexican at the second battle, and Mexico City soon fell. So this is one of those things. It's a reason to get together, and it goes on. More popular to celebrate in the United States. It's become associated with Mexican American cultures, and it began in California in 1863, so that's like the year after the battle. And so in the 1980s, it was popularized by beer and wine companies campaign. Today, Cinco de Mayo generates beer sales on par with the Super Bowl. This is hard to believe on some levels, but in Mexico, the commemoration of the battle continues to be mostly ceremonial. Cinco de Mayo is sometimes mistaken for Mexico's Independence Day, the most important national holiday in Mexico, which is celebrated on September 16th, commemorating the Cry of Dolores, which in 1810 initiated the War of Mexican Independence from Spain. So that was in 1810. That's celebrated on September 16th. Okay, what else do I have this morning? I've got things that were actually searched about Cinco de Mayo. And so it's not necessarily well known what this is. And so some of the Google searches that has happened is, when is Cinco de Mayo? Well, that would be the 5th of May. Cinco is 5, Mayo is May. And so also, when is Cinco de Mayo 2021? When is Cinco de Mayo 2019? Okay. What is Cinco de Mayo in Spanish? Interesting. Is Cinco de Mayo the Day of the Dead? No, that's November 1st. It begins earlier than that, October 31st to November 2nd. It's a 3-day holiday. Where is Cinco de Mayo? Wherever you want it to be. And so, Cinco de Mayo for toddlers, Cinco de Mayo for seniors, Cinco de Mayo for dogs. Is Cinco de Mayo about mayonnaise?
No.
Cinco de Mayo. Please we give up. Pass the cerveza. All right, those were just kind of funny things that have been Googled about Cinco de Mayo. And really, I ridicule no one because, up until about 20 years ago, I hadn't heard about it. And before I studied Spanish, I wouldn't know what it meant. So these are the things. But as we remember Cinco de Mayo, we're going to look at some saints of Mexico. And these are interesting, maybe. But you do see these. If you go to Mexico and you go shopping, you will see statues of these saints down there. And I'll run through most of these 10 saints of Mexico. And of course, the most important and the most statued of all saints in Mexico is the Virgin of Guadalupe, our Blessed Mother. So, by far Mexico's most venerated saint appeared to the peasant farmer Juan Diego and directed him to tell the Archbishop. Of course, we celebrated this story greatly back in December. On December 12th is the feast of Our Lady, and December 9th is the feast of Juan Diego. And somewhere in between we talked about this. The Virgin was unusual with dark skin, and the moon at her feet as an important Aztec religious symbol, and she spoke the native indigenous language. We talked about this when it happened, that there were things in the image that appealed to both the Spanish and the indigenous population. And so that this image of Our Lady of Guadalupe really really spoke to both to all sorts of different nationalities. On October 12th, 1945, Pius XII decreed Our Lady of Guadalupe to be patroness of all the Americas. And so that's North and South America. So she's the patroness of Americas. And so that is a cool thing. And so we celebrate her name. And millions still go to Mexico City at that time. And so that's number one. Number two, San Juan Diego, St. Juan Diego. And of course, Juan is John. And it talks about Juan here. He was, a native, an indigenous person. And, he's going to Mass and he sees the Blessed Virgin and she says, go to the bishop and tell him we need a chapel built here. And he goes and he says, well, you got to bring me a sign. And so he goes back. She gives him the roses and the bishop recognizes the roses. The tilma that is still on display down in Mexico City is there. And so Juan Diego and the Virgin of Guadalupe, and we'll often see Juan kind of hiding in the corner. He's, on the tilma, so an interesting fellow. St. James the Apostle, and that's Santiago. And so if we're used to this, Santiago Apostol. St. James is the patron saint of Spain, and his veneration in Mexico began with the Spanish colonizers. And so his cult, his presence is still strong. Many towns and villages are named for him, Santiago. And his feast day, July 25th, is celebrated throughout the country with the dance of the Testuanes, a reenactment of native Mexican fighting Spanish conquistadors. And of course, James is the first martyr, and his site in Spain is a great. His site in Spain is a great pilgrimage site. The next one that we see, can you find St. Jude? A little.
Jude?
Yeah.
I'd love to.
Each month at the church in downtown Mexico, crowds gather for masses dedicated to St. Jude, who has been adopted as the patron saint of Mexico's underbelly and down and outs, and just about anyone else too. St. Jude is said to help with money problems and is especially venerated by the poorest residents, and he's considered even to be a protector of thieves, possibly. Well, in Mexico that is, and maybe here in the United States too. But he is the patron saint of lost causes, and I give this, I was visiting this dying 90-year-old woman who had 13 children, and she had like 4 St. Jude medals, and 8 or 9 other ones. And it's like, okay, which one of you children are the lost cause? And they're like, oh, that's all of us. And so Mother was always praying for us. And so mothers still pray that today. And so Jude has the flame on him somewhere. Where did you find it? On top of his head, yeah. And so that patron saint of lost causes. Next one, Saint Charbel. Can you get a picture of him? Charbel.
Love to.
He's a Lebanese monk, and it's just interesting when you see him. When I was in Mexico, his statues were available at all the statuary shops, and he was a Lebanese monk who was canonized by the church in 1965. He lived in the majority of his life as a hermit and a monk, and the miracle that brought him sainthood was that for several decades, his corpse did not decompose, but remained flexible, as if his blood was still flowing in it. His devotees prayed to him to intercede on behalf of the sick, and there is a church dedicated to him in Mexico City's Central Historical Distrito. All right, in the Central Historic District. I really, before I went to Mexico, I had hardly heard of Saint Charbel. His veneration here in the United States has not excelled like it has in Mexico, but just an interesting character. There's another one that is an interesting one, and that is Santa Muerte, or Holy Death. You got something on that, Joan Spring? See what's...
Yep.
And Santa, thank you. Santa, of course, is the feminine. So Holy Death is a female. So not exactly like the Grim Reaper. So the death cult is strong in Mexico and nowhere more than in Mexico City. But a saint who can be prayed for, she can be prayed to for all manner of woes and worries. She may be portrayed as a man, but is most often a woman, and statues generally hold an important place in a family's home, not officially recognized by the Catholic Church. The cult of Santa Muerte has not declined since the 1990s, when her cult boomed in popularity. This is an interesting cult, right? Do you have a picture of that in some way, shape, or form? Of course, it goes with the 3 days that they celebrate Holy Death in Mexico very strongly. That gift of all souls and all saints, that great connection to those who have gone before us, and a very strong love of that, a very strong connection to that. I should say that Father Omar cautioned me about this devotion, and so we have to be careful about whether it becomes almost paganistic, in that, if we cut death off from our life with God, and that was his fear with it, that death became more powerful than life, death became more powerful than good, and so one has to be careful about that. Was what Father Omar cautioned me in that cult. But you will see that picture, and you will be aware of it. Santo Toribio Romo. He was a martyr of the Cristero War, and so the Cristero War. And if you remember this war, this was the church was outlawed in Mexico. This is hard to imagine. And, this was similar to the time where, religion was outlawed in Russia. And so this thing that we can get by, we can simply be a secular culture without God. We can be a godless secular culture. And so for a while it was outlawed. And of course there were people who fought against this. And he was one of the martyrs of this Cristero War. He is the patron saint of immigrants, as he is said to have appeared to a man lost in the desert, trying to find his way across the border, and kept him from dying of hunger. He then told the man that when he had found work and was safe, he should look for him in Santa Ana de Guadalupe, the saint's hometown. When the lost man described the apparition, followers were convinced it was Romo. Santo Toribio Romo. And then I'm going to give you the little boy. El Niño Fidencio. The Fidencio boy, called as such because he never developed a maturity and had a high, soft voice his whole life. He was a famous Mexican healer and also participated in the Mexican Revolution movement. Never officially recognized by the Catholic Church, his followers in northern Mexico and southwestern United States still ask his intercession for the healing of loved ones. one of the things about a long-standing and lively Catholic culture, such as in Mexico, there are many stories and many devotions that go with that, and a very devotional people. And of course, one of the beautiful things that they do in almost all the church, well, I can't say all, I don't know how many, but in many of the churches in Mexico, you'll go in and you'll see the floats. And so these are like, Jesus will be in the tomb, and there'll be these different things that they carry around in procession, especially on Good Friday, but on other days of the year. And so their parades, have a very religious theme to them, a very celebration of the day theme to them. And so on Good Friday, there's the carrying of the big floats, and it's an honor to get chosen to help carry those floats, and it's just part of the culture. And so sometimes you'll go into a church and you'll just see the float laying there, and I don't know how to describe it. It's not a hay wagon on wheels, which we would think about, but it's more of a plywood platform, probably 8-12 feet long and 4 to 6 feet wide, that they get 8, 10, 12 people underneath it to carry it through the streets, and they're decorated with beautiful flowers oftentimes, and hours are placed into these floats. And so a little bit like the Rose Bowl parade with all the flowers as part of it. But this is, part of this is devotion. This is where you can get a great love for Mary. You can get a great love for Juan Diego. And I think I've told you this story, and I maybe talked about this at Our Lady of Guadalupe. Our Lady of Guadalupe is huge in Mexico, but like Father Omar Guanches, who is in Long Prairie, in our diocese now, he was from Venezuela, and he said when he came to the United States, he had no devotion to Our Lady of Guadalupe or Juan Diego, but it was simply through celebrating Our Lady of Guadalupe with the Mexican people in Long Prairie that he developed a devotion for Our Lady of Guadalupe and Juan Diego. And so this celebration of things really allows us then to develop a devotion and a love in a special way for our Blessed Mother and Our Lady of Guadalupe, patroness of the Americas. For my part, I always grew up with Our Lady of Guadalupe. Of course, my mother was pretty Marian-oriented, but the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe was always available to us in our home and repeated, and so we knew of her, as well as Our Lady of Lourdes and Our Lady of Fatima as well. Those were the big three that we had in our house growing up. And so these are ways to foster faith and devotion and love, and of course all of that ultimately is love of Jesus Christ and the way that people have followed him over the years and continue to follow him. All right, Cinco de Mayo, a minor battle in Puebla, Mexico in 1862 on this day, and but a reason to celebrate the Mexican culture that is present in our land and, of course, strongly present in Mexico, supported in indigenous people and in people who came from Europe, and mainly Spanish. All right. Thanks for joining us today. As always, Tuesday through Friday at 9 a.m. live streamed. Peace. God bless you. Have a great day.